Welcome back to Incremental, the continuous improvement podcast. This is our practice edition where we talk about improvements we've made through the week and tie them back to lean principles. My name is Uriel Eisen.
And I am Devin Bedoni.
And you have a quote?
You cannot believe something and know something at the same time. If you know, you don't need to believe. Unknown source.
Yeah.
This loops back into the running experiments thing. Like, you either do something to find out for sure, or you do it based on your gut. It's not, you can't really do a mix.
Yeah, I think it's also funny because I definitely have felt, I think less and less, but definitely when I got into this, that there were some aspects of lean manufacturing, the data production system, that just did not make sense to me.
Yeah.
But knowing what effect they could have, I kind of just had faith for a while.
Yeah.
Sort of, people being like, hey, you should increase your batch sizes because it's going to be more efficient. And I was like, yes, I think that as well. But what I'm reading is that is exactly wrong. And so I'm going to keep pushing through. And now that we're seeing the positive effects of that, it's sort of like you don't need to believe it, because you just know. I forget where I found this, but someone was sort of like, do you believe in your mother and father? And it's like, what? That doesn't really make sense because you just know they exist, right?
Right.
You know them instead of like, I don't know, do you believe in, I don't know what, but it's an obvious one is like religion or a god or something.
Sure, yeah. But there is a lot of things that are knowable that we believe because we don't take the time to know.
Yes.
Or we trust.
Right.
We trust that someone else knows and we believe in that person.
Yeah.
And so I think it's an important distinction to make, especially in your own business, because, like, I don't know, up until not that long ago, I believed that you couldn't do lean processes in a job shop because that's what everybody else knew.
Interesting.
Not entirely true.
Right.
And all our systems are full of assumptions, beliefs.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty key.
Yeah, hard to take a good hard look at things and figure out what's what, I think.
Yeah. 100%.
Some improvements. Do you want to lead us off?
Sure. So we moved our shop this last week, and I wrote some stuff in here, and I was like, do these count as lean improvements, or is this just like what you have to do to run a business?
Right.
It's always a little, like, as we get deeper into this, I'm kind of questioning that more and more, but I also recognize that we could have just set everything up exactly as we had it before.
Right.
So I think in a certain sense, these do count.
Yeah, I think also the process of deciding what to work on is probably a big part of what distinguishes it.
Yeah. So the context for this is, in our old shop, our shipping station was extremely cramped. So like literally back in a corner, stuffed behind a lathe. Pretty brutal. And it was combined with our laser marking station, which made sense because generally speaking, things get laser marked and then go directly in a box. Or close to it. So yesterday we kind of sat down to discuss, this was the discussion I was talking about, where we went about it backwards, I think, in hindsight. But to kind of rework the shipping station, make it a little more efficient and more functional. And so one of those things was adding an additional workstation there. So like an additional rolling box with drawers and a tabletop.
Okay.
Because prior there was nowhere really to set a box while you filled it. It was kind of like there was like one area to wrap your parts and also to stick them in a box. It was very cramped.
Gotcha.
And then the shipping station computer was combined with the laser computer. Right now there's still one computer, but they're separated now. So there's like room for the label printer and
nice
all the packaging supplies and stuff without being crowded out. And then also a full rack for putting all the parts in process, either parts that need to be packed and shipped or parts that are ready to go in a box or whatever.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why not? I mean, it sounds sort of like your previous shop maybe was inefficient in some ways, but also more efficient in some ways. Like picking a part up off of the laser marker, wrapping it and putting it directly in a box.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of better, but maybe that's what you're doing now too.
Probably that's what will happen now. I don't know. This is definitely a work in progress, and we were kind of like, let's try this.
Yeah. It also seems like the phase of clarifying the process. Like now you have room to spread everything out.
Yeah.
And go like, okay, here are all the parts we need. And then maybe once it's established, you go like, wait a second, why are we walking so much between this thing and that thing?
Yeah.
Let's now condense everything back down.
Yeah. Yeah, basically.
Yeah. That's cool.
It is kind of wild to have this giant space and be like, man, I am walking a lot.
Yeah.
Like, let's kind of explode it all and then put the pieces back together in a better way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really easy to break things out by process or by department kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like in Toyota they talk about kind of like the lathe department and the milling department, and actually instead designing around workflows.
Yeah.
And I was sort of thinking about this in our shop. We have, I think you use a Rollo printer. Is that right?
Yeah. 3 of them now.
Nice. We only have one, and it is a stupid constraint. It's $190, $80, something. And that has driven a lot of the decisions we've made, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was my next one, is I bought another Rollo printer. So right now we use the Rollo printer to print out shipping labels.
Mm-hmm.
We also use it to print out work order slips.
Uh-huh.
And then we use a different one with a different size sticker for our like stock and tray tags.
Oh, nice.
So previously, every time I've wanted to print out a work order slip, I had to go over to the shipping station and interrupt whatever was happening there
to
print them out. So I ordered a second one that will go with the stock stickers.
Gotcha.
And I'll just do them at my desk, and they'll be kind of like a dedicated
interesting
work order production zone.
And so those are each plugged into a different computer?
One of them's wireless.
Okay.
To anyone who's looking, I would not suggest that one as much as it sounds wonderful.
Okay.
It's really a pain to get it to function properly.
Mm.
I mean, you can hook it up easily. We found that making custom label sizes on it was really quite a challenge. Like,
interesting.
It took someone like half a day to figure out how
Yikes.
to get the other one, it's a snap, like takes like 10 seconds. I don't know why their software is so different.
Yikes. Because I've been interested in putting plugging 2 into one computer, but we've had issues sort of, I don't know. This is not new, but the whole like printing things seems like it's stuck like 10 to 20 years ago.
It's really weird. Yeah.
I feel like it's a great product for Apple to make. Not that anyone's listening at Apple. But
it just seems, printer that just works.
Right? Like that's sort of their business model. Is like you don't need to think about it. It's super usable.
Yeah.
And it just works. Anyway.
Like literally we moved yesterday. We hooked up the new printer, our old printer, just our standard like paper printer. Like I went onto my laptop, like found it, hit like add device, and it just said connecting for like 3 hours, and then
it just didn't connect.
Did not connect.
And you're like, this just worked.
I tried it more times. It did not function.
That is ridiculous. Very odd.
Yeah.
Nice. I have a funny one around sales.
Yeah.
And marketing. So anyone who's using Instagram or doing other things, I had talked about an app called, I forget what, like Lazy Board or something.
That's a funny
like
name
that.
for an app. I forget what.
Where you can create a new keyboard for your phone.
Yeah.
And then, so in addition to that, you can do it natively by going, at least on iOS devices, going into your general settings and then keyboard, and then something like phrases or something like that and add a phrase with a shortcut. And so now like all the hashtags I use, I have different shortcuts. So you type a shortcut and it populates that.
Interesting.
I also made one, like I start a lot of replies to basically customer service as like, hey, or like, hi there, thanks so much for reaching out.
Yeah.
Or thanks for reaching out. And so I would type that out a lot. So I added that as a shortcut.
Do you do a lot of that from your phone?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe I shouldn't. I find that like reply times are kind of critical.
Yeah.
And so like if I'm biking or if I'm on the ferry or commuting, it's like I get a notification on my phone and I just hammer it out.
Yeah.
If it's something long, then
needs attention.
I'll go to a computer. But in general, a lot of them are kind of like, it's like, hey, my package says it arrived and it didn't. And it's like, okay, like basically let's wait a day and see.
Yeah.
But reply time, I feel like makes people feel like you are attentive to them.
I think it's pretty key.
Yeah. So that was nice. It's interesting. Like that is a great example of, let's see. So I don't know if it's over processing. It's not. It's like, what is it? I mean, it's sort of wasted human potential. It's definitely wasted motion. It is a chance for defects, but it's not really. Yeah, I would say it's mostly wasted human potential. I would say is like retyping the same message you keep typing out.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting and fun to look around for little chunks that are super repetitive.
Yeah. And
just codify them. I mean, even like you were doing with your setup sheets of just having a copy and paste template. Then it's basically a form that you're filling in.
Yeah.
Like, I forget, I just came up with one of those. I forget what it was. But I was like, we need to hit the same things every time. Like, let's just have a template.
You're also error proofing because, I mean, not that it really matters so much in an email, but like your likelihood of spelling errors every time you redo it is high. And then in my case with that, my likelihood of forgetting something critical, turned out to be quite high. So that I think is a huge, it's like, it's wasted human potential, but it's also major defect catch. Yeah.
Oh, the other one and I think I mentioned this last week, was chunking the mods I had to make at the end of every gripper program to the program.
Oh, yeah.
Instead, I just put them in a manual pass-through, so now they are in there if you need them. And I don't know. Yeah, just getting those together so you don't have to rethink and retype.
Nice. Love it. So we added a rolling small tool cabinet next to our granite surface plate to get all of our inspection tools off of that, because in the past we've had it was shoved in a corner also, and we had like kind of some rubber mat around the edges of the granite. It's like a 3x4 table effectively, and so we really only had like a maybe 2 foot or not even section in the middle that we could use, and the rest of it was just kind of like storing other inspection tools. So we got a rolling base that we put a bunch of the bigger stuff in, and then our old like Kennedy boxes that had kind of the smaller stuff go on top of that next to it. So now only the stuff that like routinely gets used on the granite lives on the granite.
Nice.
So that felt like a pretty big improvement. We can also get to to 3 sides of it now instead of just one.
Very nice.
Pretty cool. I'm excited about that.
That's very cool.
So I guess putting that in context is just like, what are we dealing with there? I guess it'd be kind of like over processing when you're just having to like move things out of the way constantly and re-handle unnecessarily, and then defects from not actually having the space to inspect how you needed to.
Yeah, or dropping something because it shouldn't be there. Yeah, and I think you probably add wasted motion.
Yeah, a little bit.
Right? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to say. I've been dealing with that a bit. Like, it often feels like when you organize things, and I think it's always worth organizing, sort of like building that baseline, like eliminating confusion and chaos lets you then improve. Like it might be that you put everything in drawers and then you go like, you know what, every time we get this thing out, or let's build that a specific house, you know, or drawers are annoying. Let's 3D print a bunch of caddies for all the things and they hang right on the perimeter of the stone, or, you know, whatever it is. But it just like getting back to that baseline of everything has a home, everything is labeled, everyone knows where it is. It is not just out perpetually.
It's a fine line between between optimization and kind of generalization.
If you need / want Kaizen foam, I have a bunch. Oh, because you have to order it in pretty large quantities. You don't have to.
Otherwise, it's crazy expensive, right?
I forget. Yeah, the difference in cost is like, all right, I'm just going to order a bunch. I'm just going to overstock. That's what I'm going to do.
It's so lean of you.
Yeah, definitely. Sam refined the chute on our, the way we cut our pin stock on this bar.
Shear thing?
Yeah, it's like, I forget what they call it, a rod parter, I want to say. So sometimes they would fly out and sometimes they would fall in the chute. So you made a fully enclosed chute. So they always just drop into the into the bin. Going back to last episode discussing improving our production.
Yeah.
And like maybe, I mean, the truth is eventually with people working on different aspects of the business, everyone's going to be improving their area.
Yeah.
And so it is kind of cool to see him continue to improve our production. Like even if that's not our limiting factor.
Yeah.
Again, it's still making it more efficient, and it's not like he's twiddling his thumbs when he runs out of production. There's always more stuff to do. So any gained efficiency, any reduction in, you know, making defects, making errors. Oh, we had a fun example of single piece flow.
Yeah.
Or problems with batching resulting in single piece flow. The stop I made for that pin parting machine to set the length of the blanks.
Yeah.
Was not very well built. And so over time it would drift.
Yeah.
And so the first few times we cut a whole bunch of blanks, carried them over to the tray, and then they wouldn't fit in the tray. Or like half of them wouldn't fit in the tray. And so then basically going to single piece flow where we just bring the tray over to where we're making them. Every time you pick it up and put it right into the tray. Basically gets your feedback loop between production and QC down to one piece.
Yeah.
And so you instantly know if it's good or bad and can make adjustments immediately if you created a defect.
Please tell me you're also going to update the stop though.
Yes. Yeah. So we already did that, but even so, there is still a chance, and there's no sense in not doing it that way.
Yeah. Right. Otherwise, you're just having to then also pick them out of a bin. Yeah. Well, I guess you have to pick them out of the bin anyway into the tray.
Either way, which obviously going back to the improve your process, not your operations.
Yeah.
These are all bad operations. But also going back to running a business, we have shipped a lot of parts using this bad process. So,
interesting.
Yep.
A small one we did due to our new lack of space constraints. We have these workstations at each machine that have like a bench top. Below that, they have places for half sheet pan trays for work in process. And then above the bench top, they have a computer for looking at all of the setup sheets, etc. And our old location, they were turned so that the back of that bench was against the machine.
Okay.
Because otherwise there wasn't room to walk between the machines. But it partially blocked. It made it so you couldn't open the door on the machine all the way.
Okay.
By about 8 inches, maybe.
Oh, wow.
8 inches. Which wasn't the end of the world, but it was mildly annoying. And then also it's just like less ergonomic. You kind of had to like step back and over every time you took a part out of the machine to put it on the tray and then get a new blank. And you had to turn the same for looking at the computer screen. So we rotated them 90 degrees. So now they are sticking, the back is away from the operator when the operator's standing at the machine.
So you're approaching a U-shaped cell.
We are approaching a U-shaped cell.
You have an L-shaped cell.
We have an L-shaped cell, yeah.
And so the next step might be adding the full U.
Yeah.
For like working left to right.
I believe
cut
so.
stock to finished parts or something.
Yeah. Although, interestingly, having done, I wouldn't call them ergonomic studies or anything, but it is often faster to have the rough stock and the finished parts in the same place, because when you
go back,
when you drop off the finished part, you grab the stock and then you go back.
That makes a lot of sense.
So I'm not sure if we will actually do specifically that. I think we'll see how things play out. That has been a discussion.
It would only be if you wanted to do like cleaning or something.
Come again? Oh, cleaning of the parts.
Yeah, like getting the coolant off or something like that.
Yeah. The main issue we've run into is when there's just not enough room in those lower racks underneath the bench top for all of the stuff in process.
Once you add in-house anodizing, you'll have your racking right there.
Yeah. So I think we might have like a U shape, and on the rack to the right will be like stage jobs and stage stock.
Okay.
For the next job, but not so much the stuff being worked on immediately.
Interesting.
We'll see.
Cool.
Yeah.
So this one is it is an improvement. We've been working on a rebranding effort, and it's funny, the past few weeks have been filled with projects that are, I don't know how to describe this exactly. My best description is non-linear, meaning like if you're writing an essay and it needs to be 5 pages and you're at 2 pages, like you kind of know that you need to write 3 more pages, right?
Yeah.
And so you're like, all right, yes, there's editing, but you write out a bunch and then you edit it and it's good generally. Or like building a house, you're kind of like framing a house, you know what needs to be framed.
Yeah.
And like those projects, I feel like are kind of easy to just get in there and do work.
Yeah.
And you're making progress.
You can kind of wrap your head around the steps and what's next and how big those steps are.
And like, yeah, it might be a tremendous amount of work, but it's just work, and that's how you get it done. With a logo, I guess, so redoing our logo, I'm also designing some buckles, and they're all so small and so minimal, and like there's no room for complexity in a funny way. And so there's just like nowhere to hide and nothing. Like sometimes you end up going down a path and you're kind of invested in it because of time, but if it's not it, like sometimes it just does, you're like, this is just not it, and it's hard to just, it's easy to try to push it across the finish line and be like, what if we tweak this? What if we tweak that? What if, instead of being like, okay, big step back, let's try a totally different direction. Not totally different, but like, let's try a really new direction. And I think this is pretty well established in like, I went to design school, reading books about it. Basically, the most efficient design process stays broad as long as possible, kind of. And it's just always so tempting to like latch onto one and try to push it across the finish line because it feels like you might be able to get it there. Yeah. And the last few weeks have just been like pretty agonizing, head bashing, and I just keep finding myself sort of succumbing to the temptation and trying to pick one that will, like, trying to pick a winner instead of like continuing to move all these ideas forward at once. Which,
I mean, I think especially when you're also running a business and you have a lot of other things to do, you're like, just get this done. Let's get this off the plate.
Like we need to ship this, right? And like, especially with the holidays coming up, there's that. But like at the end of the day, I'm not going to ship it if I'm not happy with it. Yeah. And so it's just, it's been tough. With the branding, we finally did get it across the finish line. And that was really just by going like, okay, I give up on trying to finish this. Let's just throw out a bunch of ideas and
wait, so you did wrap up the
logo?
You did?
Yeah. So that one, but the buckle, not yet. The buckle, we're still in that very awkward phase, but just sort of wanted to talk about that. I don't know how that fits into lean. I mean, I guess like designing the future sort of talks about ways of, I mean, exactly that, like staying broad, making sure that all of the stakeholders and all the considerations are sort of at the table at all phases.
Yeah.
So that you don't, I think what often happens is you find a winner by one metric and then you put a lot of work into it and then realize that from another point of view, it doesn't work at all. Like for the logo, we had a constraint of when we put it on our products, because they're so small, any details start to collapse and look really weird and start to approach a blob.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to limit yourself to pretty basic shapes. Mm-hmm. But then it's very easy with a basic shape of either looking extremely generic, looking like someone else's logo, or just being boring. Yeah. And so there was always a temptation to be like, oh, well, let's spice it up with like a line here. And then it's like, wait, when that gets small, you're not going to see it. Or
yeah. Have you considered a square?
Yeah. So there was a bit of a running joke of owning the Squircle. Like, can we own the Squircle? No, is the answer. Anyway, so yeah, it's tough to. That category of project is just hard.
Yeah,
I guess
it is.
I will also say this raises some frustration I've been feeling with as our production methods get better and better. They are far outstripping our ability to design new products. And so just having these like really dialed processes to make really cool, like intricate, tricky little parts.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know.
It's Can't just come up with more tricky little parts.
Exactly. And you're like, man, this is, yeah.
If anybody out there has some tricky little parts
they
want
need
to
me.
give away.
Exactly. Yeah.
Uriel will make them for you.
Maybe
yeah. He'll make them for himself. Say thank you very nicely.
No, we have done some parts for other people, but it's hard. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to at least stick it out for a while longer of trying to make our own parts.
Yeah,
because I think that it's a very. I think it is nice because it moves away from these non-linear projects. Like the second someone gives me a part and they're like, can you make these? Give me a quote. I know, like, yes, fixturing is tricky sometimes, but like, I know I can do it. Yeah. I look at a part. I have an idea of how it's going to get made. It might not work exactly how I have planned V1, but yeah, there's no question of like, do we push this through and then realize we have to totally rework everything?
Yeah.
No. Is there a chance you ship the parts back to the customer and they realize they need to rework everything? Yes, but that at that point is not really your problem. So.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. That's me for the week.
Cool. I have one more, which I mentioned last time. I got my wisdom teeth out.
Yeah.
The office that I got them done, they're cranking through a lot of people. They clearly had very competent people there, and I think they were sort of leaning on that a little bit.
Yeah.
They had so many systems that needed improving. It was kind of wild to see. Like clearly they're good at what they do from a value add perspective of like treating people's teeth. But all the surrounding processes were wildly. So like they hooked me up to. I got put out for a wisdom tooth extraction, and so they hook you up with these sensors for like heart monitor and like blood ox and all this stuff. The cables were totally tangled. And then I was like, is there a reason it's like all the way across the room? Because it was like sort of pulling on all these like stick-on stickers and stuff. They're like, oh, not really. Like everyone sets up the room a little differently. Then she like connected the blood ox meter to my finger, then had to disconnect it so she could untangle it more because it was too tangled, reconnected it. Then the guy came in to go over like pricing and consent forms. And he was like, where is the little signature pad? And the tenant was like, oh, it's under the chair. And he's like, oh, I didn't realize we were doing a scavenger hunt today. So he like crawls under the chair to get it out. And then he like gives it to me, but the blood ox meter is on my finger. So I was like, well, can I take this off so I can sign it? He's like, that's fine. So then I take it off to do the signing. And then he's like kneeling on the floor with this wireless keyboard on the rolling stool and like the mouse. So he's using it as sort of a desk, which obvious, which was the best solution available, to be clear. But I was just watching all this, and it's like they're doing this all day, every day. And then every attendant who came in had to like find the keyboard and mouse because there was nowhere that it lived. And then they had a wireless keyboard and a wireless mouse, but no desk. And so they were like balancing the mouse on the keyboard while finger typing because they were holding it in one hand. And then they would like pick up the mouse to use on their leg it was just wild to watch. And I was like, yeah, I mean, just so ripe for like all their non-value add tasks to get refined and codified, and how they set up the room. So every room you walk into, you know exactly where everything is.
Got this revolutionary idea. It's called a desk.
It's called a desk. It's called a shelf. It's called, Velcro. I don't know. Like, it was just wild to see. So
that's amazing.
Definitely it was nice in terms of, I think it's hard to remember sort of how far we've come in the shop, and we've put in so many hours, and then it very quickly just becomes like background, like, yeah, of course that's how we do it because it's better, but we did get here not by chance.
Yeah.
It's like hard won, a lot of time that you're pulling away from other things that often seem more pressing or something. And I think like it is hard, and it takes someone who is very passionate about continuous improvement, I think, to keep it going in an organization. We've talked about this, like it's hard to keep it going. It's hard to build it into every day. It's always easy to sort of defer to all the improvements to tomorrow. I think if you graph things out, like Alicia and I built a spreadsheet that sort of models some of these improvements out. Yeah. You are only behind for the first 3 to 6 months, right? It's only a bad choice to make improvements. But then by like year 3, you're like 3 years ahead of where you would have been. Yeah. And it's just hard to kind of keep the energy and keep the stoke high for getting in there every day and doing not what your business is supposedly there to do.
Yeah. I think it's just good to remember that, like, thank God you're not using a mouse on your leg.
Yeah. But like we have so many examples of that, right?
No, I know. You just have to like keep those things in mind and be like, okay, this is about not using. It's just like such a great image.
The old mouse on the leg. Yeah. I mean, we had one till, I don't know, 2 months ago where we had a wired mouse and the wire was slightly too short. And also the wire kept like falling back over the desk. And so,
shorter and
so
shorter.
you keep having to like yank it back.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to become used to those things and not just be like, nope, we're solving this today. And so you have to set aside the time, I think. Mm-hmm. But also you have to come up with target conditions. Yeah. Anyway, a lot to do, a lot of contradictory ideas, but yeah, it was nice to see. I mean, they're a successful business, right? Right. And likely much more successful than my business. From a
almost guaranteed.
I hope for them. But it's very cool to see that there's so much room for improvement. Yeah. Even in those businesses. So yeah, kind of fanned the flames for me a little bit of like, all right, now this is good. We've really made a lot of big improvements and a lot of stacked little improvements that result in big improvements.
Did you have any second thoughts right before you went out?
Well, so it's funny you say that. I did ask the surgeon because I was trying to think like, how do I
politely
enhance the odds of success? And so I asked him about checklists. I was like, do you use checklists? And he was like, actually, I do use a lot of checklists, and recommended a book that I'm going to read called something like If Hospitals Could Fly. And it's basically about applying aviation checklist methodology to the medical field. I read Checklist Manifesto, which was very similar. Yeah. I suspect this one is a little bit more in the weeds, which should be fun. So I was just sort of asking him about that, to sort of hoping that he would in the moment be like, all right, let me actually do these checklists. I think actually 2 days ago, one of the big guys who taught aviation safety around checklists crashed his plane and died.
Interesting.
On a very simple, not simple exactly. He had engine failure on takeoff, and the thing you're meant to not do is try to loop around to land back on the runway. You're meant to just like straight coast to the nearest clearing.
Yeah.
And he didn't do that, and it is a checklist. And
right, like what do they call that? The impossible loop or something?
I don't know. Yeah. So I was sort of asking him about that. So another part that he mentioned, which was interesting, is that anyone in the operating room can also stop things, right? Instead of like just the head honcho.
Oh, interesting.
Like anyone can sort of surface a problem. So he was saying he used a lot of that.
Do they use hand-on lights?
Well, the funny thing there is I think like there's so many tools that can and should be applied to like system development, right? Like checklists, like standardized work, but they're not necessarily the same as like continuous improvement, which is just interesting to see. Like I appreciate that he has checklists for while he's digging my teeth out of my jaw, and I hope he followed them, but there's a big part of the cost presumably that I am paying, a big part
is for an expert to be behind the wheel.
Well, I was going to say for a bunch of people like using terrible systems and wasting time.
Well, that too. Yeah.
And so, yeah, anyway, there's room for all of it.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool.
Yeah, I think that's a wrap.
Thanks for listening once again, as always.
Yes. You can find me at austere_manufacturing on Instagram and austeremfg.com on the internet.
You can find me at likenprecision.com on the internet and lichen_MFG on Instagram, and the pod at incremental CI.
We also have a Patreon. Please go check it out. It is
very affordable.
Very affordable. No. Well, it is that, but also thank you to everyone who's jumped on there and supported what we're doing. We've been kicking around some fun ideas. Nothing has solidified quite yet, but we're excited to hopefully grow what this is. Nothing too major, but kind of just looping a lot of that back into the community. So maybe one day we'll buy a private yacht.
You all can come for an hour.
No. But for now, no. It's just about making some of this more sustainable and growing what we're doing. So
indeed,
consider supporting.
We will talk to you soon.